Greetings fellow gorehounds and welcome back to another Blood Splattered vlog. So earlier today I finally got a chance to watch The Boy, which was a movie that came out like way back in January, but I was way too busy to watch it and I was hearing some very mixed things. So I put it off, despite liking the trailer, because I'm actually a pretty big fan of creepy doll movies like Child's Play. Heck, I even like some of the Puppet Master movies, despite most of those being pretty much balls. But sometimes highly entertaining balls. Like a gay porno. But having finally seen this movie, I kinda see why it got such a mixed response. Because honestly, it's not very good. It's got a solid premise with a creepy doll and some decent atmosphere, but it's kinda filled with really pointless jump scares and really shits the bed in the final act. Like to the point where even the stuff I did like earlier on in the movie was kinda ruined by the end of it. But unfortunately, I can't go into that without going into spoilers, so let's just keep it spoiler free for now. But one of the things I did like was the doll itself. It had this nice uncanny valley effect. Just this creepy little boy face with this kind of like generic expression that you can kind of read depending on the lighting as either smiling or frowning. And there were obviously some shots where they were playing with that very intentionally. And I really liked those shots. I also really like the old English mansion that this movie's set in. One of those ones where there's just way too many rooms to explore, so therefore there's way too many rooms for this creepy doll to hide in. And you just kind of assume around every corner lurks like a ghost or a monster, or there's like fucking like rats in the walls or something. And for the most part, it's shot decently, though the bluish tint of the whole movie just kind of bored me after a while. And one thing I really didn't like was that this movie has a lot of like pointless dream jump scare sequences. You know what I'm talking about. It has a lot of those sequences where like a character walks through the house and like stumbles across something and then something jumps out at them or something like sudden happens and then they wake up. With the sudden thing that usually happens being something that is so absurd and off the wall that if it were actually real, it would change the entire course of the movie. But of course, it's never real. Now, to be fair, some of the dreams are foreshadowing stuff, but given the way this movie ends, they don't make sense in the grand scheme of things. And I'll explain what I mean by that when we get to the spoilers. I did like the main actress in this movie, whose name is now completely escaping me, but she played Talbot in Supernatural and Rose in The Vampire Diaries, and I'm pretty sure she was Maggie in The Walking Dead. And in this movie, she plays a character who is kind of on the run from an abusive ex, and this guy is obviously so abusive that she had to put a fucking ocean in between them because she flies out to England to take a job, with the job of course being babysitting this kid for like a month. Except when she gets there, it turns out the kid is a creepy fucking doll. Which normally would have been one of those, this is getting weird, I'm getting the fuck out of here, but given her backstory, the fact that she really needs this money and the fact that she really can't go back, it made some sense why she would stay, even though it was a bit of a stretch. But I was willing to roll with it, though some things that happened later, I was not willing to roll with. Rupert Evans is pretty good in this movie, though he really doesn't have much to work with. He's just supposed to be semi-charming British guy who she befriends and falls in love with over the course of the movie. And in that role, he's fine, he's serviceable, nothing really too special, but nothing really bad. But there is one other actor who shows up later in the movie who was not very good. He had his moments, but he just didn't feel as raw or as real as everyone else. He kind of felt like he was acting. Anyway, my fellow gorehounds, I think I should probably just move on to the spoilers because, well, I am running out of things to say in a vague way that will make any sense. So to sum it up, this movie's not very great. I can't really recommend it. It's just too safe. It falls apart in the final act, and there's just way too many annoyingly pointless jump scares. I know I keep saying that, but like really, I've said it less than they happen in the movie. And with that all said, let's move on to the spoilers. Okay, so you got this girl, she's on the run from her ex-boyfriend, she goes to England to babysit this kid, and the old couple that she meets ends up revealing that the kid is this creepy fucking doll. But she takes the job anyway because she really needs the money and she really doesn't want to go back to her boyfriend. And over the course of the movie, she's getting calls from like either her best friend or her sister, I think, and the ex-boyfriend keeps showing up and harassing her to try to find her, so it's very obvious why she wants to stay away from this guy. Meanwhile, she starts to discover that something is off about this doll. It seems to be moving when she's not looking at it, and every time she turns her back on things, her stuff just disappears. And at night, she finds herself waking up very often to like the sounds of like a kid laughing. which in all honesty was probably the creepiest moments of the movie, even if some of them were just dream sequences. But eventually things come to a head and she comes to the conclusion that the doll is alive. But it only moves when she's not looking at it. So she starts communicating with it by talking to it and then leaving the room and then seeing what it does. And it will do things like bring her like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because it believes it's her favorite because it saw her making it earlier in the movie. Meanwhile, she's been striking up a friendship with Rupert Evans, who is essentially the grocery guy who brings her groceries throughout the week. And it's obvious this guy has lived in the town his whole life, so he knows all about like this family and the boy they used to have who died in a fire, and how the boy was supposedly dangerous in that it actually killed a little girl, but no one could prove it. And up to this point, despite it being an overly safe horror movie with way too many jump scares, I was still kind of on board. I like creepy dolls, I just do, and I will forgive a whole lot of flaws in a movie with a good creepy doll. In fact, the first half of this movie at times reminded me a lot of Stuart Gordon's Dolls, which was a very flawed movie that I still enjoy. I don't know, just something about creepy dolls that just works for me. Anyway, the point is, eventually the violent ex-boyfriend shows up, and it's at this point in the movie where things start to go south. First off, the boyfriend's acting is not that good. At least in comparison to everyone else. This guy, he just felt like he was trying a little too hard to come across like abusive boyfriend stereotype. And I don't know, I guess I've just seen this kind of role played way better in other movies. But anyway, I could have lived with the poor acting. I mean, I've watched many movies with terrible acting and still love them. No, what lost me was what happened next. So the boyfriend arrives, he starts getting really abusive, and naturally, the boy, aka the doll, does not like him very much. So he issues a warning by writing "Get Out" in blood above him while he slept. And then when the boyfriend woke up and saw that message, he assumed it was her because he doesn't believe the doll is alive. In fact, he doesn't believe it so much, he straight up smashes the doll in front of her in a fit of rage. And right here, right at this moment, oh, what's that? This is when the movie shits the bed. So he smashes the doll, which I was cool with, because I'm like, okay, shit, he just released the spirit, right? And as if responding directly to my assumption, they start hearing like banging like in The Changeling, and a mirror on the wall just straight up explodes in like a supernatural way, and then a hand crawls out of the hole in the wall, and I'm like, oh man, we're gonna fucking see like some sort of physical manifestation of this boy's ghost or something. But no, it turns out there is no ghost, because what crawls out of the hole is the boy, who is now a man. In fact, he has been a man, and he survived the fire that he supposedly died from years ago. And he's been living in the walls ever since, kinda like People Under the Stairs. Though People Under the Stairs light, cause this movie is safe as shit. But the best part about this shitty reveal is that when he turns around the corner, it's done in this super slow-mo shot, and then it slowly pans up to reveal his face, and he's wearing a mask that is identical to the doll's face. And when it was on the doll, it was fucking creepy. But the mask on the man? That shit was fucking hilarious. And all of a sudden, this overly serious movie becomes an unintentional comedy goldmine. From that point on, I was laughing my ass off at everything that was happening. Which granted does mean in some ways I was a little more invested than I was earlier in the movie, but not in the way I think these filmmakers intended. Just God, you had all these possibilities. It could have been some sort of monster hiding in the doll. It could have been some sort of like creature living in the walls. It could have been anything. But no, we went with the most boring option of it just being a man. God, that is so disappointing. But man, like I touched on it earlier, the other thing I really don't like about this movie is that it's so safe. Nothing is too violent, nothing is too intense, and nothing is too horrific. And hey, if you're the kind of person who's not very seasoned with many horror films, this might be a decent place to start. Though I'd hope you'd pick a better movie overall to start with, like maybe something like Gremlins. Or fuck, even Dolls would be better than this. My apologies for this jump cut, but I just realized I totally forgot to talk about what it was about the dreams that didn't make sense. Alright, so in this movie, she has dreams that like involve her walking down the hallway and coming upon a painting of like the creepy doll boy, and then an arm bursting out of the painting and grabbing her by the neck, obviously foreshadowing the fact that it's actually a man living behind the wall. Except my problem with that kind of stuff is that that stuff mainly makes sense if there is a supernatural entity involved. Without it being a ghost, without it having a ghost even in the movie, then she's just having these dreams for no reason. I guess she's psychic or something. Whereas if it was actually some sort of monster or some sort of like supernatural ghostly entity or something, then it would have totally made sense if it was like warning her in her head in her dreams while she was sleeping. Or even if not warning her, just infiltrating her dreams just to fuck with her. But no, it was just a man, so essentially her dreams were just predicting shit. Alright, that just kind of seems lazy. Hell, more than lazy, it feels like you're just trying to pad the running time at that point. So yeah, I can't recommend this movie. I did not like it. I thought it was kinda shitty. And with that all said, peace out my fellow gorehounds, and I'll catch y'all later.